Welcome everyone to the Nonprofit Insights webinar for today, LinkedIn's new Board Connect and other tech tools for building the best board for your org. We're very excited to have Alice Korngold and Brian Breckenridge with us today to share their knowledge and expertise and to have a really interesting discussion with us. So before we get started, I want to make sure everyone knows that the slides and the recording of the webinar will be available within the next couple of days. We will be emailing them to you, so you will have those in your inbox. Second, you can ask questions in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen, or you can follow along with the online conversation and ask questions on Twitter using hashtag VMLearn. That's hashtag VMLEARN. So I guess we're ready to get started. I want to introduce you to our wonderful speakers today. Alice Korngold is the president of Korngold Consulting, which provides strategy consulting services to Fortune 100 companies, professional services firms, foundations, universities, healthcare institutions, and national, regional, and global nonprofits, of course. Her areas of expertise are board governance, corporate social responsibility, and the partnership building between nonprofits and for-profits. She blogs for Fast Company and Huffington Post, has written a book called Leveraging Goodwill, Strengthening Nonprofits by Engaging Businesses, and is the co-chair of the New York Leadership Council of Global Giving. So she is eminently qualified, to say the least. Brian Breckenridge has spent much of his career helping thousands of nonprofit organizations operate better using online platforms. And last spring, he joined LinkedIn to help them launch the LinkedIn Nonprofit Solutions Program, which now includes LinkedIn Board Connect. He also spent about 9 years at Salesforce.com, so he's no stranger to the world of nonprofits and technology. We're happy to have both of you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I think we will get started with Alice. So Alice, I'm going to give you control of the presentation now.
Terrific. Thank you. Sherry, thank you so much. And Brian, I'm excited to be on this program with you. And I want to thank LinkedIn and LinkedIn for Good and VolunteerMatch for putting on this program. VolunteerMatch has been a colleague and a friend for a couple of decades, and you're doing incredibly important work in this field. And I've been part of LinkedIn for a long time and very excited about what LinkedIn for Good is doing with Board Connect. I think it's a powerful addition to the field of nonprofit board governance and a major contribution. Welcome to our guests. Very excited about this opportunity to talk with you. And I'll jump right into the first page of this presentation and discussion. I have a few pages for you and then would be very happy to discuss questions. So I think the first question is it really worth the trouble to all the trouble involved in recruiting new board members and going through the LinkedIn process, which means reaching out to complete strangers in some cases, and going deeper into the networks of people who are known through your networks, but way far beyond what you've done before. So the big question is it really worth the time and trouble before you embark on this? And I would say there's 6 questions for you to ask yourselves before you get into this. First of all, is your organization already maximizing its revenue potential in terms of fees for services, government revenues, and philanthropy from foundations, corporations, and individual giving? A second question, are your programs and services cutting edge, highly competitive, in demand, and high impact in ensuring that your organization is fully achieving its mission? And are you measuring and demonstrating that? A third question, are your board members bringing the full array of expertise and diversity of perspectives, experience, and networks to ensure that your organization is maximizing its potential? A fourth question to think about, does your board have the number of people who are qualified and prepared to step up into leadership positions as you move forward? A fifth question, Are your board members attending meetings, fully engaged with the organization, making personal financial contributions, and fundraising to the extent that is necessary to help ensure that your organization is financially robust? And finally, do each of your board committees have a full complement of people who have the experience, expertise, and diversity of perspectives that you need for the organization to be successful? If your answers to any of those questions are no, then you might want to invest in recruiting new board members, and LinkedIn Board Connect is a powerful new resource to help you access some very talented board members far and beyond what you've had access to in the past. On the next page, I outline 7 steps for you to determine the experience and qualifications you seek in new board candidates. So this is a really important process, 7-step process for the board and CEO to go through before you even go through the LinkedIn process of identifying board candidates. And this is really a process to figure out exactly what you need before you even create your shopping list, if you want to call it that. So first is for the board and CEO to think about, and the senior team to think about, so what's this organization's greater potential over the next 3 to 5 years? Where do we see ourselves going as an organization? So the board has an important role in oversight, but if all the board does is oversight, then you're not going to get anywhere in the next several years. You want to be able to look back 3 to 4 to 5 years from now and say, wow, look where we've taken this organization. And the second question is, what's the revenue model to achieve that greater potential? Because imagining where you can be doesn't mean anything unless there's the money to accomplish that. And usually for nonprofits, that revenue model is a patchwork quilt of funding sources. Depending on your field, it could be fees for services, government grants, and philanthropy from a number of sources, foundations, corporations, individuals. So putting that together, depending on a variety of opportunities and threats. And then third, figuring out, okay, so given where we seek to take this organization in the next few years and the revenue model for success, then what's the role of the board to get us there? And what are we asking of each board member to help us achieve success, to maximize success? And then number 4, how will we organize ourselves as a board to function effectively and efficiently to achieve our greatest potential in the next few years? At that point, and by the way, for structure, what I'm talking about there is how many people will it take? Actually, what's the fewest number of people that it will take, because the fewer the number of people, the more effective for decision making. On the other hand, for nonprofit boards, we usually need a certain number of people, depending on the board, to have the mix of people that we need to get the work done. And then what are the right committees to get the work done? How often do we need to meet? How long should the board meetings be? What should be the focus of agendas to focus the board on the work we need to do? So then in number 5, and here we get to the LinkedIn Board Connect part, so based on what we're trying to accomplish as an organization and the role of the board to get us there and the revenue model, who do we need on this board? What's the background? What are the diversity of experiences, perspectives, and networks, the experience, the expertise that we need to accomplish the greater potential and the revenue model to get there? And that's the exercise that's critical at this point. And then to think about, well, who do we have on the board, and what are the gaps? What do we need? And a transition process also. At a certain point, it's time to celebrate and thank board members who have been helpful, but where perhaps their involvement is no longer useful, depending on the stage and direction you're going in as an organization. So those are the key steps to go through before moving forward in deciding what you want to add for your board. On the next page, I talk about the tremendous value of LinkedIn Board Connect as a game changer. Old school for those of us who've been working with nonprofit boards for many years, for me it's over 20 years, I've trained and placed several hundred corporate executives on nonprofit boards and consulted to hundreds of global, national, and regional boards. I've seen the era when boards have been very insular, and unfortunately still the case with some boards, but that's fortunately starting to pass. And it was just an exercise in who do you know, and boards were very insular and homogeneous. Today, a very high value is placed on building boards with far greater diversity of perspectives, experience, and networks, which so enriches the organization's mission and vision, as well as its strategic and financial success. Such an entirely different board dynamic as you bring in people from different backgrounds. And the LinkedIn Board Connect brings such a tremendous opportunity to expand outreach among people far beyond your usual circle of people that you know. On the next page, I talk a little bit more about LinkedIn as a game changer for nonprofit board matching. Beyond simply vastly expanding the network of people for you to reach out to, I think a tremendous value of the LinkedIn approach is the kind of information that it provides about candidates. So besides having the candidates basically their resume, their qualifications, experience, etc., each candidate's page has written out endorsements by former employers, clients, and colleagues that can be cross-referenced with the person who's the source. Now the new addition of the click-on endorsements by people who know the candidate. Again, you can cross-reference the people who've provided the reference through their LinkedIn pages. And then a phenomenal opportunity is you can identify mutual relationships who can there be potential sources of references. So you can learn a great deal about a candidate before even embarking on, before even reaching out to the person to have a conversation with them. I will definitely encourage that anyone who is, that any candidate you consider for a board, once you make the list of people that you think could be good candidates for your board that you identify through LinkedIn, it's essential that you then have one-on-one in-person meetings, not only the chief executive officer or executive director, as you might call the person, of the organization, but also board members have individual interviews with board candidates to understand the candidate's interests and qualifications, the degree of commitment they're willing to make, ensure that the candidate understands what you need from them and what they want to get out of the experience, and make sure that you've got a good chemistry with the person. So that's really essential. And finally, on the last page here, page 8, incredibly important, the process doesn't end with identifying and recruiting someone for the board. Once they're on the board, you want to make sure to maximize the value of their participation on the board in advancing your nonprofit. So first, in onboarding candidates, to make sure that they have information about your organization that will be useful to them to hit the ground running in terms of what you're expecting of them, having bylaws, budget, audited financials, list of board members, committees, schedule of board meetings, any information about strategic planning, conduct a new board member orientation. Secondly, to engage each board member throughout their involvement on your board. And for very advanced boards have a committee, a board governance committee, or some call it a nominating and leadership development committee that plays that role to make sure that every board member is fully engaged. It's also, I think, incumbent on the chief executive officer to get to know each board member one-on-one and make sure that he or she understands how each board member can add value and to maximize that opportunity. It makes the experience great for the board member, and it really makes sure that the organization is getting the value and benefit from each board member's participation. It varies so much from person to person what they can bring to the table. And then finally, leadership succession planning. Having worked with so many boards, and I'm sure many of you on this call have had this experience. You might have a wonderful board chair today, but it's really critical to be cultivating your future board leaders. So to identify and recruit people for your board who have leadership potential, and then provide them with leadership opportunities while they're on the board for both of you to see, is this someone for future chair possibility. So to chair committees, to serve in officer positions, and you can even just start with them taking responsibility for a project here and there. And that's very rewarding and satisfying for board members. But again, it will help you see, here are people that we have that can step up to leadership down the road, which is tremendous value for the organization. So those are my thoughts about this, and again, with such excitement about LinkedIn for Good and LinkedIn with LinkedIn Board Connect and VolunteerMatch for teaming up to maximize this opportunity for the nonprofit sector. And I would be thrilled to take questions and then turn it over to Brian.
Great, thanks, Alice. That was so wonderful. So we do have one question that came in from someone, and everyone who's listening, you can input your questions in the chat box on the bottom right of your screen, and we'll get them to Alice, or we may save them until the end as well. So one of the first questions was, I think, a follow-up to what you were talking about with succession planning. And the question is if you have any recommendations about how to talk to a prospective board member, assess their interest in serving while not actually committing to put their name into a nomination until you've spoken to the rest of the board members or until the rest of the board has met the candidate. So sort of that massaging and feeling out mode.
So I think that just being very candid is the best approach. And since my work, as I mentioned, for the past 20 years has been in training and placing hundreds of business executives on nonprofit boards, the people that you're talking with in many cases are also thinking about, well, which is the best board for me in terms of my interests? And everyone says to candidates, oh, pick a board where you're passionate. Well, most people, in my experience, have many, many interests. So it's not that there's one issue that they're passionate about. And most candidates that I work with, they say to me, Alice, help me find a board and an organization where I can be useful. So that is their most pressing interest. Where can I add value? Where can I be useful? So that's a two-way conversation. And so I think candidates welcome the conversation with you where you say, okay, this is where our organization is. This is where we came from, our history, our origins. This is where we are now. This is where we're going. And we think that given your background, this is how you maybe could help us. And then what are you thinking, candidate, about how you might want to be involved? And it's a two-way conversation. And then you say, well, that's really helpful to understand. Or the candidate might say, well, I actually, even though my background is in finance, the last thing I want to do is be a treasurer and do financial things, which actually often people say. But the candidate might say, but actually, I also am good at blah, 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 and I would like to help in that way, and I have some background in that. Could I perhaps be useful in that? The candidate might say, you mentioned that you're working on this and that. I could maybe help with that. And so it's almost a negotiation and a conversation. And then you say, that's really helpful to understand. Let me discuss that with the nominating committee and the board. And candidates absolutely appreciate that you're thinking seriously about how and where they can be involved, that you have a process, and that you're thoughtful about it. I think most of the candidates I've worked with are concerned when you're not being thoughtful about the process. Candidate I worked with, the board was a little, they were a little tender from having some bad experiences with some difficult board members that they finally got rid of. And so they wanted every board candidate, one that I introduced to them was their very next board candidate that they were considering. They wanted him to visit every site. They wanted him to meet every board member. It was a long process. Well, this board candidate, he was very open to that, and he respected them all the more. This was a very busy partner in a law firm. He respected them all the more for their thoroughness, and I think that's fair enough. If a candidate is not comfortable with that, I don't think you want that candidate. So I think if you're just cordial and thoughtful about it, I think it's absolutely fine. It's just a matter of how can you be helpful and useful? Is this the right fit? And I think that's perfectly fine to have an open conversation about it.
Great, thanks, Alice. That's really great advice. There's one other great question that I want to slip in here now, and then we'll move on to Brian. So one listener mentioned that her nonprofit has an advisory council as opposed to a board of directors. So would you suggest the same sorts of considerations and planning steps for an advisory council as you would for a board?
Yes, I think actually LinkedIn for Good can be tremendously helpful for finding advisory council members. Now, advisory councils are interesting because they serve many different functions. I've seen them work in many different ways. I've actually served on different advisory councils. It's a great way for people to engage who want to be supportive and helpful but maybe not have the responsibilities of a governing board. So here again, think about what you want, what purpose you want the advisory council to serve. It could just be a group of people who have expertise that will be useful to you, and they might not actually ever meet, or they might meet. It depends, or they might just be names of esteemed people that you'll put on the website. So think about what the purpose is. Be clear about that with people. Make sure they understand that they are not a governing board so that they don't get confused and you wind up with two groups that think they're the governing board. But once you determine what their function is, what you need them for, and if it's people with expertise or background that you need, absolutely use LinkedIn for Good to identify people with certain backgrounds and expertise. I think that's fantastic. Just be clear with people. The main thing is what their role is, clarity of roles, what you need them for, so that everyone understands expectations up front and comes in with their eyes wide open, and lots of appreciation and gratitude. Very important.
Great, thanks so much. And there are some more questions, and we'll try to get to them at the end after Brian has presented as well.
Terrific.
So we're going to switch on over to Brian Breckenridge now, who's going to take us on a deeper dive into LinkedIn for Good and LinkedIn Board Connect, or the game changer, as Alice called it. So Brian, are you ready to take control of the slides?
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to spending a few minutes with everybody. Excellent. Just confirm that you see the screen change.
I'm seeing it, yes. So
Excellent.
I think we should be good to go.
Well, thank you very much, VolunteerMatch team. I have for many years appreciated VolunteerMatch. I worked in the volunteer and giving management space for Fortune 500 between my responsibilities at Salesforce Foundation and Salesforce and LinkedIn with another organization that plays in that space. And I came to know the value that VolunteerMatch is offering to the industry on a really intimate level. So thanks a lot for always being such an important connector between industries and for creating all the enabling, the social impact that you enable. And also, Alice, very nice to meet you, and man, I learned a lot during your regards. I personally have served on a board in the San Francisco Bay Area with an agency known as Bay Area Community Resources, about a $25 or so million agency that looks after a lot of the after-school programs and mental health programs around San Francisco. And I have to say that I joined that board in my beginning of my 30s and have spent 4 years and 5 months there now, and have really felt it's been an extraordinary complement to my professional skill set. And all of the things that Alice was referencing about best practices are things that BACR has executed with me as a as a governing board member there. And I think a big part of what led me to it, I fell into it for the most part on dumb luck. The board is currently composed of lawyers, educators, and architects and bankers, and they didn't have anybody with technology experience, yet they were doing quite a bit as they scaled in technology. And I realized very quickly that my unique skill set of being a technologist and public speaker and innovator in the social technology area would be of great benefit to them, and have since seen them expand programs and realize extraordinary efficiencies that bringing Salesforce and LinkedIn and other technology innovations to the agency has provided. So many of us, I think, don't know what an extraordinary resource we would be for the boards in our area. And thanks to the program that my peer here at LinkedIn Burlinghouse is creating, and the awareness that Alice and VolunteerMatch and BoardSource and Taproot and many other volunteering and board-related entities are suggesting to the marketplace is vital to the sector, especially with millions of open board seats. And it just so happens that LinkedIn has 187 million skilled professionals that, likely with the right education and the right awareness, and certainly the utilization of the best practices that Alice suggested, that we can match make these great skilled professionals, share their information on LinkedIn with the organizations on this call that much need those leaders and advisors and governing board members for their organization. So it's our hope at LinkedIn that we can close the gap on those millions of open board seats in U.S. nonprofit organizations, and I'm really honored to be on today's call. Today's content from LinkedIn is going to be available to you at any time, certainly by way of email from VolunteerMatch, as they do a great job of keeping in touch with their following using LinkedIn and other social media outlets and email lists and newsletters and so on. This information is also available at nonprofit.linkedin.com, and that's the first version of a resource that's going to be offered to the nonprofit world that my sense is will expand over time. So again, honored to be here. The thing is more certainly open to Q&A, but the thing I'll share really there are many very practical tips about reaching out to what Alice referred to as those game-changing perfect strangers or complete strangers perhaps. And we'll also just mention that I've spent the last year and a half with LinkedIn on the phone with nonprofits, from the president and CEOs of multi-billion-dollar nonprofits, and also the executive directors and one employee nonprofits that I also spend a lot of time on the phone with, just helping architect strategies on LinkedIn, either that cost money or certainly that don't. And the beauty of the LinkedIn for Good initiative here related to board members doesn't have a cost associated, so please know there won't be any budget requirements and barriers related to this program. So let's just, I guess, step into some of these practical tips, as well as a little bit of an overview of the LinkedIn board program. So you really do need a powerful network of connections in order to achieve your mission. And I think this goes without saying. We all know that earned income is important. We know that volunteers are important for many of the programs that we offer to the world. But we also know that it's the advisors and the partners and the peers and the gifts in kind and the people that offer their meeting space and just all those subtle things that happen in our communities that make our work possible that require a network. And LinkedIn is just doing a much better job of making that network something that's visible and tangible for organizations to really harness. And so this picture, which looks like a Rorschach test that you may have received during a traumatic part of life, it is what's known as an in-map. And believe it or not, these colors and these points on this map represent an individual's network. And you can go create one of your own by going out to your search engine of choice and put in the phrase in-map. And you'll actually be able to very quickly visualize your LinkedIn network connections in a format similar to this. That's a bit of a side note, but I think it might be an interesting value add for you to go out and create a free in-map of your network, just to really understand the power that you likely have at your fingertips just with your network and being conscious of what's in it. But now let's go a little bit higher in the sky and look at this interesting picture as being the map of connections that are utilizing LinkedIn in general for their career and for their networking and their social and professional connecting in their lives. within this vast network of 187 million professionals on LinkedIn, you might not think about it this way today, but in fact, your next development director is in this network on LinkedIn and using LinkedIn. You know, real estate lawyers that are interested in doing work in the vein of work that your mission entails may be out there somewhere just waiting to be educated by you or hear from you. Could be local funders or certainly members that can advise your organization and serve on your board of directors or board of governors. And luckily, LinkedIn is in the business now of helping you get into that network on a really simple and no-cost basis for the sake of board recruiting. So in these slides, we'll learn a little bit more about the power of connections and leveraging the network of your board and how you can tap into your board's connections on LinkedIn. And some of the services that our program is going to donate to you for use with your organization. And our program is supporting right now U.S.-based 501c3 nonprofit organizations and hope to expand the program globally in time, especially as we all make it more successful. But know that this is going to be a program that again, helps you recruit board members. We'll talk about it, and then I'll give you some specifics on how to get involved in the program. So let's talk about the most important building block to utilizing LinkedIn. First, you just have to use it a little bit. You have to read some news there, which I think you'll find is very pertinent to what your position is in the sector. For those that are utilizing LinkedIn, you may know that it's no longer just a place people go to find a job. In fact, 80 or 90% of the behavior that we see from it is reading news, it's getting updated on important updates from organizations that your nonprofit organization is likely partnered with in the community. It's joining in groups and building communities like the incredibly successful group that VolunteerMatch has on LinkedIn right now with thousands of volunteer development marketing and nonprofit professionals meeting and talking about important topics. And so know that people are on LinkedIn not just to find a job, so it's a great place again for your board to spend time in their careers and for all of us to spend time in our careers to further our careers and create more success for ourselves and our organizations. Again, the most important first building block here is to make certain that you personally, as the ED or any other role in your organization, is to connect to your board members on LinkedIn. And if you literally just reach out to them with a connection request, you suddenly become the first to reconnecting from them. And now you can open the doors and have more proximity to the networks of your existing board members for the sake of networking and coming to know the important circles that your board is serving in. And so again, LinkedIn makes it easier for you to work with your board to find the right talent that you need, but first you have to connect to your board members. There's probably more we could say in terms of requesting that your board members suggest that you are one of their employment endeavors in their LinkedIn profiles, but most simply and most importantly, just connect with them so that you in fact can have more visibility into their networks on LinkedIn and they into yours. Next, search for the connections that will support your mission, leveraging that network that your board has that again now you can see more clearly because you're connected to them on LinkedIn. As Alex was suggesting, really get clear about what you're looking for. You know, the research that Board Source and Taproot have been publishing have suggested that certainly the board members that you bring on and recruit should have some interest in your mission. And in fact, they should be passionate about your mission, as I am about enabling youth, and therefore spend a lot of time in monthly board meetings and board retreats and so on with Bay Area community resources because I'm passionate about enabling youth and families and bringing more mental health to the people of the Bay Area. And so I had that passion. So if somebody was looking for me and they offered those types of youth-enabling services as part of their mission, they'd be looking in the right place. But also know that you're looking for specific skills. And the number one reason that people bring in board members is for their unique and specific skills that they can bring to the organization for scale and for creating success for those organizations. So you need the right connections, again, to attract future board members, secure funding, do all those great things that were in the colorful cloud that you saw earlier. But now your ability to search the network and connect and start building relationships really does eliminate some of that we put around at a board meeting in an existing organization with the staff and the board and say, who do we know? Like, who can we reach out to? And typically that's very much a Rolodex exercise of yesterday, but today we're really creating a more streamlined approach for you. So again, you decide what you're looking for. Maybe it's a strat consultant or an accountant to come in and help out with your books. And my nonprofit that I work with recently was looking for a treasurer, and I was able to bring LinkedIn into the mix instead of just doing the typical Rolodex comparison exercise for hours of our board meetings. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But know that as soon as you know what it is you're looking for, or where you think you have a gap in your board, whatever your strategic goal underpinning your name might be, then just go into LinkedIn. And this, again, is in your free membership. This, I think, is the secret weapon for nonprofit executives. And click on Advanced Search. It's up in the top right-hand corner of any LinkedIn screen. And when you go into our Advanced Search, which is getting better and better by the day, you can enter a target designated or free membership with us. It's relatively robust, and you can put in your geographic area and the types of skills you're looking for and the seniority or the type of title of professional that you're looking for. And this advanced search will start that conversation for you. So again, you're looking for people that have a certain background and skill set in your area, but out of hundreds of millions of LinkedIn users, you're going to get to a pretty short list pretty fast once you start to really tighten down that criteria. Now, in many cases, you're looking for a first or a second degree connection. And that means that you're either connected to that professional that can bring that skill to the gap you have on the board, or you might be connected to them by way of another one of your connections, which would make them a second degree. And it's these two levels that people that use LinkedIn regularly and have dozens or even hundreds or thousands of connections on LinkedIn have a lot more access to. But if, in fact, your network is more limited, you'll start to notice in the search results that some people are your third-degree connection, meaning their connections and your connections are connected, but there isn't really a direct line of sight to that individual. And so that is when the programs that we're providing allow you to start to now message and reach out to those folks that you may not have immediate proximity to. So let's talk about this briefly, discovering the advantages of recruiting board members on LinkedIn. And I think before I step into that a little bit more wholly, I might reach out to the VolunteerMatch team and find out if there's any questions that have come up in the whirlwind few moments that I've already been speaking.
It's been great so far, Brian. Thanks. We do have a few questions, but I think it makes sense to finish this out and then address them because there might be an opportunity for Alice to chime in as well. So let's hear the rest of the questions.
The direct advantages of recruiting what again, could be a, quote, complete stranger. So I think once you play around with LinkedIn a little bit more and get more proactive with it, you'll realize that almost no one is a complete stranger anymore. Typically, they're at least a little bit of creative in-mailing and calls away from being a lot less of a stranger. But just to impart a really quick personal story, when we were looking for that head of finance, a controller-type personality for our board at BACR to help counsel our CFO, especially on some of our fiscal sponsorship models and a few of the other innovative things that we were looking to do as an organization, I personally said to the president of the board, hey, you know, we should really use LinkedIn. And this was ahead of the release of this program, certainly. And she said, well, I think so, but typically we've only recruited with who we know directly. And I said, well, I think that'd be good, but I bet the Bay Area has a lot of 10-year-plus experience CPAs, 15, 20 miles of the headquarters for the organization. And I bet if I ran some quick searches, I'd find some folks. And sure enough, she and I jumped on the call similar to this one, where we shared our screen over the web. We ran a search and found 30 or 40 CPAs in the Bay Area, and we narrowed it down to about 19 that had the word board in their background and looked to have some proximity to nonprofits and had the financial chops we were looking for. And I started sending some in-mail messages out to these people that I didn't have anybody in common with. And lo and behold, out of the 19 messages that we sent out, 7 people responded affirmatively and receptively. And that message that I sent out was very simple and said, I'm on a a board of a large agency in the Bay Area. We're looking for a senior finance professional to help counsel our CFOs. It's something you'd like to talk more about. And I didn't provide any more detail, and I didn't provide the name of the organization even. But the opportunity looked so appealing and was so tailored to the people that we reached out to that 7 out of 19 reached back out to me. We ended up bringing on somebody that had been with the audit firm that we'd worked with in the past and that we knew well. But nonetheless, we gave that candidate a great run for his money thanks to LinkedIn. So again, recruiting board members normally looks a lot like the governance committee saying, hey, we need somebody with, let's say, a tech background. Who do we know? And then you play that game where you go around the organization and route mass emails that ask people who we know. You repeat that a bunch of times, and then maybe you start screening people that come through that process. Whereas what LinkedIn's going to try hard to do is say, the committee says we need somebody. The requested target introduction now can happen through LinkedIn. So we can look on LinkedIn, find some great people that meet that criteria, especially if we've thought about our own networks as an organization and realize we're really tech weak, or we don't have the people in Silicon Valley that we really do need to take our organization to a new level. Well, guess what? There's a very good possibility you can find those people on LinkedIn and at least start to suggest that the opportunity may be interesting to them. So joining the Board Connect program managed by LinkedIn for Good, which is the social impact initiative here at LinkedIn, we're going to help streamline that process. And what we've done is decided to offer a free service that helps you quickly identify connections with the precise skills that you're looking for, and then utilize LinkedIn and some additional search tools. It's really like a premium upgrade of LinkedIn for one member of your staff, and that's really what we call Board Connect. And so you're going to get access to a product that's commercially available that's called Talent Finder. And this service, and the way that it's going to help you, again, is going to help you more efficiently with more search criteria than you have access to in the free membership, find highly skilled, highly specific professionals in your area that can meet the needs that you have. And it's about $1,000 a year product or a little more. And we're leveraging this on a donated basis for you. And really then learn how to get access to this, you need to attend one of our exclusive webcasts. And the next one is coming up on January 10th at 10 a.m. West Coast time. And again, you can go out to nonprofit.linkedin.com to get more details or to sign up to be invited to this webcast. And also, if you're if you're a member of a group on LinkedIn, you have a familiarity with what our group's functionality is. We've got about 1 million of them out there on our network, and over 10% of them are created by nonprofits. But go out to a group that we created called Board Connect, and you should be able to join that group as well. And that's going to be a great place for you to stay in touch with other organizations taking advantage of this program, and we'll certainly make other updates and things of that nature out there. So, you know, what we're trying to do here is make recruiting board members easy. You, along with your board, can define what you're looking for. Instead of spending a whole bunch of time going around the table and asking who people know, you actually identify a short list of candidates using this Talent Finder elevated access on LinkedIn. You ask your board for specific introductions after you've connected with them. If, in fact, you find some connections of your existing board or existing executive team that you connected to on LinkedIn and you want to ask those individuals for an introduction to people that you think may be a nice compliment to the board, you can be proactive for them. And then continue with the normal vetting and screening process that you put in place. That Alice and her team are going to be superb at helping with. Know that Alice's offerings and a note that she's noticed that she's very active on Twitter and so on, so I'm certain she can be helpful and be a great resource. Also, Board Source, a great resource. And as I understand it, the team from VolunteerMatch is going to be sending you slides out, so these links may be an additional resource, and you'll be able to click on this presentation and go into these Board Source resources. But really, again, we hope that the connections on LinkedIn that you can make, sorry about that, that's my animal going crazy. We hope that the resources that we provide have become more successful, and I'll pass it back to the VolunteerMatch team. We look forward to seeing you at nonprofits.linkedin.com.
Thanks, Brian. That was really great, and we definitely have some great questions for you. Let me just switch back to my screen. And it sounds like your dog is extremely excited about LinkedIn Board Connect.
Yeah, Luke is on the Marin County SPCA, and so he is he's incredibly skilled in the area of being a dog, and they are proud to have him.
That's great. Well, you know what? We've got some great time for questions, so I will just get started passing them off to you guys, and you can take it from there. So the first thing that Alice might be able to address, if more and more nonprofits and organizations and people start using tools like LinkedIn Board Connect and using LinkedIn to connect with potential board members online, it's possible that some of the people that we try to reach out to will be contacted by multiple nonprofits. In the fatigue that potential board members might feel by being kind of recruited by multiple organizations. I don't know if either of you can speak to that.
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab. I mean, LinkedIn is, when we think about LinkedIn for development or for business development broadly across corporate and nonprofit sectors, we are incredibly careful to make certain that members do not feel solicited by offerings that really are not at all applicable to their LinkedIn managed itself over time. The types of folks that are providing messages that are transactional versus targeted and relationship oriented in nature go out onto the network. And so again, LinkedIn really keeps its member and its free member, frankly, first. And so a couple of things come to mind. One, we, I think, do a really good but number two, and I think this is just a kind of an empirical point to note on this point, we have 15 or 16,000, if not more, corporations and now 200 nonprofits that are making between very humble and very massive annual investments in LinkedIn for the sake of recruiting their future staff members. And we're yet to see a pushback from the professional community stating, please don't have these recruiting professionals from the for-profit and nonprofit world reaching out to me with these perfectly targeted opportunities for me to advance my career. We're in fact seeing the opposite of that. We're seeing a 95% receptivity per some research that we compiled out of 13,000 member survey a few months back, stating that those 95% of folks were open to communication by way of LinkedIn from people that they're not at all familiar with, if in fact what they're reaching out to them with by way of InMail, which is seen as a very credible way of communicating, is incredibly pertinent to their skills and gifts and talents. So it's my sense that though more and more I think people will start to proactively connect with professionals that can benefit greatly from connections on LinkedIn, as long as we as a community are presenting more, in fact even flattering. You're going to see this as an incredibly, you'll see a very receptive audience, as we've seen, frankly, with on the staff recruiting side. I think the same will apply to board recruiting and even development and business development related utilization of LinkedIn going forward. And we're very mindful of it. So that's my response. I'm sorry I got long-winded.
No, I'd like to add to that too. I agree with what you said, Brian. And again, having trained and placed several hundred corporate executives on nonprofit boards, I see increasingly that individuals and their employers and companies see it as a tremendous opportunity for people to serve on nonprofit boards, an opportunity for people to add value in advancing nonprofit organizations by providing their skills, experience, and expertise, as a way for the individuals to develop as individuals for leadership and professional personal development. And I think they appreciate the options. If they should hear from more than one organization, I think it's very exciting for them to see options. And I think for nonprofits, it's better if you get a board member who's had a chance to consider a variety than say, you know what, I think you're the one that I want because this is a place where I can add value now that I assess and think about it and where I'm really passionate about what you're doing. So I think it's a win-win. And for the candidate for the person you reach out to who doesn't want to do it, they just won't respond. As Brian said when he reached out from the organization where he's involved, from the Bay Area Community Resource Center. So that's all. In my work with board candidates, they're usually below the CEO level, although I've worked with CEOs also. And historically, the candidates have said, you know, nonprofits never knew to reach out to me because my name wasn't the one, you know, at the tip top of the company letterhead. And I'm really excited now because my company's sponsoring the work with you to have an opportunity to serve on boards. So I think LinkedIn is opening up this huge opportunity for people who, to whom boards would never have had access to before. So it's a win-win.
That's great. Thank you both. And along the lines of discovering interest and interested prospects in places you might not otherwise have, Judy actually had a great suggestion or question for Brian, which is there a board member or interested in serving on a board category in the LinkedIn profiles feature that would help with the search results and the search process using LinkedIn. And before you answer, Brian, I just want to point out that the volunteering experience and causes section is something that we at VolunteerMatch have been really excited about, and so that's always a really good way to indicate board experience and board interest. But Brian, I'll let you take the rest.
Oh, certainly. If you wouldn't mind, pop the control back over to me for a moment since we have 6 minutes remaining, and let me see if I can just show you something. I think that will articulate that a little bit. There we go. The LinkedIn profile that you see here, if I navigate to mine, to your point, when I show my personal profile of LinkedIn, and I scroll down just a little bit on that profile, the volunteer experience and causes section, which I house, front and center at the top of my LinkedIn profile, indicates the organizations with which I volunteer and the causes I support, my board experience. And so I do think that this section is today where this information will be surfaceable, and the facet that allows people to access this category of information will become more available in time. It's going to be keyword accessible now. But know that some work we've done with veterans, where veterans can articulate that in fact they're a returning veteran from active duty and are looking for work, is a way people have been able to raise their hand on LinkedIn, and I could see us doing something in that vein in time. I know that Meg and her team are incredibly connected to the product side of the organization. They, in fact, were responsible for the launch of the volunteer section on LinkedIn profiles, and so I think they've got something like what you're articulating in mind. So fantastic. We are always open to product ideas, and certainly the contact information that the team had for me, that Nonprofit Solutions at LinkedIn, is a good place to direct that feedback, and I'll forward it straight into the product team. You notice here I've got board of directors as part of my existing current employment. And so don't want to cloud the waters too much here, but just note that I'm putting my board service in two very prominent places on my LinkedIn profile, and frankly, we're starting to see more and more people do that ahead of having that the hand-raising potential that you suggested on the call.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question in the last few minutes of the webinar, and then for all of you that ask questions and they have not been answered yet, we will try to address them. We'll send them to Alice and Brian, and we'll try and get them to follow up with you so you can get direct answers to your questions. So the final question is, with all this technology and as the millennial generation becomes more of a force in the nonprofit sector and in business, they've become a focus for a lot of nonprofits to get them involved and even recruit them as board members. So for both Alice and Brian, who might have different perspectives, when do you think this is a good idea versus a bad idea to bring on younger people into a formal board position, and what are some strategies for getting them involved and engaging them, and how might it be different from engaging prospective board members in other generations?
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I think it's extremely important for nonprofit boards to be very purposeful and very attentive to engaging millennials on their boards. So based on Pew Research's definition of millennials, they define millennials as born 1980 and before. So that would be 32 years old, and I would say the sweet spot would be 25 to 35. I think that millennials bring unique experience and expertise, and many bring global experience and expertise, international internships, living, work experience, experience in social media and technology, and many have very serious responsibilities in their workplaces and bring a different perspective to the boardroom table that I think is very valuable and necessary for nonprofits to be relevant and valuable in achieving their missions. So I think a boardroom is stale and irrelevant without the perspective of millennials in the mix of people in the boardroom, and I think it's extremely important for that to be part of the agenda for a board nominating committee to identify and engage people with a variety of ages and backgrounds. So I think this is extremely important.
Great, thanks. Well, we're just about out of time. I want to say a huge thank you to Alice and Brian for sharing their knowledge and experience with us. It was a wonderful session. As I mentioned at the beginning, within the next couple of days, everyone who registered for the webinar will receive an email with a link to the recording as well as the slides. We're also going to throw in a bonus. We'll also be sending everyone an appendix slide deck from Brian that will help you all present to your board about LinkedIn Board Connect and the advantages that it would give to your organization. So be on the lookout for that email. And if you have a question that did not get answered, we will definitely try and follow up with you. I want to make one quick plug for the next Nonprofit Insight session next month, January 23rd, and that's actually 2013, so I obviously haven't gotten used to the new year yet. But this one is with DoSomething.org, and they'll be talking about their newly released study about engaging millennials, so actually very topical. Again, thank you, huge thank you to Brian and Alice. We're all definitely just a little bit more knowledgeable now about board engagement and the technology tools like LinkedIn Board Connect that will help us along the way. Everyone, happy holidays, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.